Should Anders Sorensen remain behind the Blackhawks bench? Welcome to the CHGO Blackhawks mini pod. I'm Jay Zawoski. That's Mario Tirabassi over there in his
Hello.
closet, not being held hostage by any means. Are you in
No,
danger? Blink twice.
I'm not in a closet. There are many places around my house that I've done these from home podcasts, but this is our spare upstairs room right now.
All right. Well, it looks good. You look very safe and not at all in danger. Here's what
It's
we're gonna
just
get
beige.
into.
It's okay. It's
It's just
just
beige.
beige.
Yeah, no, it's great. Anders Sorensen. Yesterday, we heard from, or 2 days ago, rather, we heard from the Blackhawks players in their end of season media conferences, and they're all pretty much asked about Anders Sorensen. And to a man, they all seem to be very pleased with his performance as a coach and the way he handled things, including Connor Bedard, including Nick Foligno, and most importantly, Kyle Davidson. I'm asking this question in more of, I think we've all kind of determined we don't want him to be the head coach, but after hearing yesterday the way people talked about him, maybe I wouldn't be furious about it if they can't get the guy they really want in David Carl. And maybe if they even do, they might choose to keep him behind the Hawks bench. Before we hear from the players, Mario, how are you feeling after hearing from the players on Wednesday?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way that um, Anders went about the year was what he was expected to do. I don't think there was any indications that he was going to take over the job and try and turn things around. I think it was definitely a change in mentality from what Luke Richardson was trying to accomplish, which was win games with the guys he was given. To when Anders Sorensen took over, it was basically we're going to bring up a lot of young guys, and you're in charge of developing them. And I think throw the win loss record out the window, like the way that the young players played under Anders Sorensen was, in the grand scheme of things, really positive. So, I think that they got, a good amount out of those young guys, like those guys that are mattering for the future. So based off of that, like, yeah, I think he did what he was expected to do. When he's been the head coach of Rockford, they've had relative success. They've been in the postseason. Guys in Rockford have taken steps forward. You look at Alex Vlasic as an example of that. So I'm not surprised that the players were complimentary of the job Anders did, um, because I think when you take the win loss out of it, they started to play a little bit better, especially at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think in the heat of the season and the emotions of wins and losses, um, we kind of lose sight of how big of a task it was that Anders Sorensen had. Not only did he have to come in, like a quarter into the season, maybe a little longer than that, but still, like,
Was this December?
yeah, take over a
Early
team
December.
that was reeling, that was full of veterans, several of which were apparently pretty unhappy to be there.
Mhm.
Get all that sorted out. Then they've got to get kids up here to the point where there's 12, 13 kids in a lineup every night. And then he's got to get them up to NHL speed, up to the system, learning how to play with each other. And once that happened, I think everyone agrees that the team certainly looked better. Now, of course, there's things here or there that Sorensen can improve upon. He said as much on Wednesday. But after hearing from the players, I don't know. I'm a little bit more open-minded to the situation than I was, 48 hours ago, 72 hours ago, whatever it might be. So let's hear from Connor Bedard. He was the first one to speak on Wednesday, and he was asked what he thought about the job that Anders Sorensen did and what his experience was like with him as head coach.
It was great. Me and him have a great relationship. I think the way he thinks the game. He grew up in his coaching realm a lot of skills work and offensive stuff like that. So that was great. I mean, we talked one on one to get him out, and I think with coaches it's a lot of X's and O's, which it has to be. But he also helped with the offensive side of the game with me, which was nice, and just having that balance of it's not always just getting ripped about D zone. It's maybe talking about the fun stuff too. So I thought he was great, and we have a great relationship.
One
I forgot
final
about that comment.
yeah, one final shot at Luke Richardson. I'm not just getting
Yeah.
yelled at by playing the D zone. We get to talk about the fun stuff too. So I mean, Connor Bedard is not going to go guns blazing endorsement for anyone. It's just not really his personality, but seemed to connect pretty well with Sorensen, who, as we know, and he's good with young guys. And Connor Bedard, still pretty young.
Younger than all of them.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
Artem Levshunov might be a couple weeks younger, but
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah, I think that is the effect that a guy like that can have, is that, especially with the young players like Connor had alluded to, and you look at the history that Anders Sorensen has had, coaching wise, it's been with the Chicago Mission. It's been a development coach with the Blackhawks. It was then an assistant coach with the Ice Hogs under Derek King, and then he took over once Colleton was fired a few years ago, and Derek King moved out, all that stuff. So he's gone from like the really young guys all the way up, and that's still what this group needed at the NHL level this year, was skills development, and a lot of those, as Kyle Davidson said in his end of the year press conference, specifically about Connor Bedard, those small nuances of the game that Bedard kind of developed and got better at this season in his second year. That's what a lot of those young guys still need to do. And, looking at next year, you might have guys like Ryan Green and Sam Renzel and Oliver Moore, like they'll all be still rookies next year. And, have a shot at playing in the NHL. And, there's possibility that a guy like Nick Lardis might have an opportunity to sniff some NHL time. Like it's still going to be a very young group that could be in the mix in the NHL. And so still having a guy that is like very developmentally focused would be beneficial as an assistant.
Yeah.
I don't think he is the guy at head coach. I don't. I think
Yeah.
if he's an NHL assistant, I'm okay with that. If he's back in Rockford, I think that's a good spot for him too.
I feel like that's the ideal place for him because he's been there before. He has thrived before. And he knows how to lead young players. Seems like a good communicator. But if they're hiring, and it seems like the guy they want is David Carl, based on all the smoke, whether or not he decides to leave Denver or not remains to be seen. But you would want to give that guy the freedom to bring in his own people. And you might gently suggest, hey, Jimmy Waite, really good goalie coach, Anders Sorensen, really good with young players, and you got a lot of them here. And there's some familiarity, maybe that ease that transition, but you can't force his hand. So I think ideally he remains in Rockford. Sarah, let's throw a curveball. Let's hear from Kyle Davidson next, because he was actually asked about that situation on Wednesday as well, about if he doesn't get the head coaching job, could he still have a spot in the organization?
I don't know what the future is going to hold. I don't know, where it's going to go, and I don't want to disqualify him in talking about any other roles. I think the one thing I will say is we have we hold great value in Anders, and if the coaching search doesn't go in his favor, he's going to be a part of our organization. We want him as part of the organization no matter what. And so right now that's under consideration as the head coach. And then, anything after that we'll figure out until then. But right now he's a candidate for our head coaching position. And but we love Anders. He's been part of the organization for some time. He's a great hockey mind. He's a great person, and those are the type of people we want in our organization.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like one way or another he is staying, which is good. He is an asset to the organization, whether or not he's ready to be an NHL head coach. I'm glad they have that mindset, and it seems like, just sort of talking to Anders yesterday too, is he kind of is like, yeah, I understand. I knew what interim meant, and I knew it didn't guarantee that I would get the head coaching job, but I hope I get a fair shake, and I hope they evaluate everything I did, and we'll see. I don't think it's a 0% chance that he is the Blackhawks head coach. I think people will be pissed if that happens. I think Hawks fans will be very upset if that happens, and I get it. But to me, and like we said, ideally Rockford or assistant, but if it's like him or like some retread like Peter Laviolette, or like, okay, you know what you're getting. Maybe I take my chances with a guy who I know is good developmentally. I don't know. It's really
maybe.
hard to, I know we're very early in the offseason, so we've heard no names. We've have no interviews. We don't know who's fired yet. So it's hard to kind of build that path I think it's a very, very slim chance he's the head coach.
Yeah, I think it'll come down to who all the other candidates are, but I think if you were to just stack resumes blindly, I unless each guy is or each person that they bring in to interview is, first time coach or no NHL experience or anything like that, I'd say probably the blind resume is not going to be in his favor. And I think that he'd understand that too. Being the head coach of the Blackhawks is not something that was going to be, I don't think was on his radar at the start of this year. And I think when Luke Richardson was fired and going with Anders Sorensen rather than actually going out and hiring someone who was available at the moment, I think that was a sign of like they wanted to make that move without having to jump 2 feet into the water, right into the next person that's the quote unquote long-term head coach. I think they wanted to be able to have somebody that was going to bridge that gap, and if they continued at the end of that bridge, then wonderful. But I think he did fine in what he was supposed to do as the bridge. But I think with the opportunity now going into the off season, you're going to have people who aren't available right now that will eventually be looking for jobs. You're going to have people who are available that you want to give them a full off season, a fresh start. You would want them to take that rather than taking over a team in the middle of a season. You'd want to give them a fresh start, fresh team, or it's somebody who's available right now. We don't know, but
We'll see.
I think you're gonna see how he would stack up to the rest of the group that gets interviewed.
All right, let's hear from a veteran on this topic. Nick Foligno was also asked on Wednesday what his experience was like with Anders Sorensen.
Big thing I'll say is I really enjoyed Anders. I think it's a hard position to come into when you're coming in halfway, first time coaching in the NHL, and I thought he handled himself really well. He's a great communicator. Him and I talked a lot, and there's a lot of things you're trying to fix and do, and even learn about yourself, I'm sure, and he'd probably admit that too. And so it was nice that we could kind of help each other, and I appreciated that he respected me enough to have those conversations, and we could work together and trying to find solutions for this team. And but I don't know where this is going to go. I mean, that's obviously a question for Kyle and Norm and the management team. But we enjoyed our time with Anders. I think he made us a better team. And I think he did a great job. So
yeah, I mean, that's an endorsement. I don't know if it's not an endorsement for head coach, but endorsement for the guy as a leader and a communicator, and that's something that this organization needs. So we'll see how it shakes out. All I'm saying is I'm moving my percentage meter from 0% on Tuesday night to 0.5% after Wednesday.
Yes, I think that's fair. Not
All
flat zero, but almost.
All right, thanks for checking out this mini pod. If you're a diehard and you are in our bracket challenge or you haven't signed up yet, go in our Discord, get all the info, do it. The puck drops at 5 p.m. tonight, Blues and Jets, 5 p.m. Chicago time. So if your brackets aren't in, you can't play. Get them in. We'll talk to you Monday on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast.